Hey, welcome to another episode of Theological Pipe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe, the like, the comment buttons. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or Google or any of the podcast platforms, subscribe to us. Appreciate everyone that's been a part of of listening and commenting and messaging me back and forth. I'm going to get right into it today and kind of tell you a little story about something I've been thinking about over the past few days, and hopefully it will entertain and make sense and give you something again to think about. Theological Pipe. We just cover news and culture and sports and politics and movies and everything from a theological perspective. So what I do is I just sit here and talk, and again, may talk about sports, may talk about baseball. Excited that the NBA is finally starting, excited that baseball is here, excited that the NHL is starting, and we'll talk as the season progresses about all the social justice stuff and the wokeness of sports and how I don't think it's necessary, or I don't think it's something that's really going to do what they think it's going to do. But that'll be a podcast for another discussion for another time. Want to talk about perception. And the way that we look at things and the way that we see things. And it may even relate to Black Lives Matter when you try to separate it from the organization to the phrase, or it may be social justice warrior or wokeness or politics or anything like that. There's this idea that we see things a certain way, and that's our perception. And if that's our perception, that's our truth. But I want to caution us, people listening, people like myself, to understand that a lot of times perception is not reality. Perception is just what we've taken in, and too often when we get a perception of something, if it coincides with the way that we believe, the way we were brought up, whatever position that we take on that subject, as long as it continues to feed our perception of that, we think it's reality, and we close ourselves to any other reality or any other reality or anything else coming in. And so perception is not reality. I think we always, every single person needs to be open to other ideas. We need to be willing to explore other ideas and look at other ideas from other sources. Don't go to people that think exactly like me.com for all of your research, because if you do, you're only going to get one side of the issue, and there's usually one side and another side, and then there's the truth, and we need to search for that truth. We need to strive for the truth, and too often the truth is not our perception, and it's not their perception. It's somewhere in the middle, somewhere that the truth is there, and we need to look for it. And when you close yourself off to the other side, when you close yourself off to other people and think that your perception is the right one, and it may be, you may be right, but you need to explore that. One thing that's been a pet peeve of mine, and I talked to a buddy of mine the other day, he kind of mentioned it, and it's something I've thought about before. One of the phrases that bugs me when it comes to politics or when it comes to any kind of cultural issue that we're facing, when there's two of them. The one we talked about yesterday was, it's not debatable. You're going to make me debate you when you say it's not debatable. Even if I agree with you, if you say it's not debatable, it's almost like I think people say that when they don't have any arguments to support their position. And I'll use school closings and openings as an example. Schools should not open in the fall. That's not debatable. Well, number one, yeah, it is debatable. And when you say it's not debatable, what you're telling me is you don't have a lot of good arguments, so you want to shut down debate. And I would say the opposite. We have to open schools in the fall. It's not debatable. Well, yeah, it is. There's plenty of debate to be had, and we should have that debate, and we should talk about that debate, and we should talk about all sides of the issue. So don't say that it's not debatable, because the second you do, at least in my opinion, you're telling people I don't have really good arguments, and I can't really defend my position. I'm just going by what people have told me, and I don't want to get in an argument. So it is debatable. Everything is debatable. And again, you're going to push people like me to debate things that I don't even agree with just because you said that. And another one is the science is settled. That's for other issues. But you hear that a lot of time from people arguing things. Hey, the science is settled. Well, that's not science. That's not how science works. So always be open. The whole point of this is, even though you have a perception, perception is not always reality. You need to be open to new ideas, to new things, to seeing things in a different way. And I want to share a story from my life that my perception was one thing, and when I finally got around to opening myself to something different, I was totally wrong. My mind was totally blown, and everything in my life changed at that moment. There was a guy I knew. He's passed away a few years ago. One of the finest men, one of the finest friends I ever had. Just a great man. His name was Tony McMullen. We called him Tony Mac. He was a convict. He got convicted of murder. You could go on YouTube and type in Tony McMullen or Tony Mac testimony, and you could watch the whole thing. I'm not going to share his testimony here. I want to share what he did with me after he got out of prison. But he shot somebody, killed them, murdered him. He actually murdered the wrong guy, was sent to prison, became the most feared inmate in Oklahoma. So much so that they transferred him from prison to prison. And when he got to McAllister, which is the maximum security prison in Oklahoma, he was such a bad prisoner and such a bad dude that they put him on death row. I think they called it H block, but they put him in this place where the worst of the worst went. He wasn't that prisoner, but he put him there because he would get in fights. He was doing drug deals. He was just a bad dude. And in prison, he got saved. He came to know Jesus, and actually was let out, after serving a lot of time and everything. And when he got out, he basically, I remember him saying, he never wanted to go back to prison, but God called him to go back to prison and minister to the guys in prison. So he went back every week to different prisons in Oklahoma, and then eventually around the country. He testified before Congress at times. He was just a really good dude, humble, and just the biggest teddy bear that you could ever want to meet. And again, the dude was 6'8", he was huge, and when he would tell stories about the guy that he was, and I saw who he was now, it was no doubt that God made such an amazing change in his life to change him from the most feared inmate in Oklahoma to just a big teddy bear. So he started going to our church, and I played on the praise team. I played the bass, and we had a praise team, guitar, drums, singers, and a bunch of friends. We played music. And so we were practicing on a Wednesday, I think probably October, November, somewhere in that range. And our pastor comes up, Pastor Charlie Jackson, and says, "Hey, Tony Mac wants to talk to the praise team." We're like, "All right, cool." And I love Tony Mac, loved him, love him. I can't wait to be reunited with him in heaven. He's just a good dude. And so he comes up and he says, "Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know the praise team is going to go to prison, and we're going to go and do a Christmas service for the prisoners, and you all are going. I need your a copy of your license so I can get you badged so you can get into prison." And of course everyone's excited, and in my mind right then I'm like, I'm not going. And I'm not going. I don't want to. Why should I go put on a Christmas show for people that are in prison, rapists and murderers and drug dealers and people who assault people and all the things that they do? They're prisoners. They deserve to be in prison. I'm not going there to make them feel happy. I'm not going. And so he got done talking. Everyone was excited. I went up to him and I said, "Tony, I'm not going to go. I don't want to do that." And I would say he looked down at me. He's like, "Brother, you're going." And when Tony Mac says you're doing something, 6'8", huge, you usually say yes. And I go, "Tony, I'm not going. I don't want to go. I don't believe in that. I'm not going." And he put his hand on my shoulder, and his hand was probably twice the size of mine. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he was like, "Brother, do me one favor. Go one time, and if you don't want to go any time after that, I'll understand." Again, biggest guy in the world comes up and puts his hands on your shoulder. You say, "Yes." I said, "Okay." I said, "But I'm just not going." And so we had conversations leading up about why I didn't want to go. And basically, they were prisoners. They were in prison. They deserve to serve their time, and when they get out, then I'll deal with them. But for now, they don't need people coming in and making them feel better. They don't need people going in and ministering to them and giving them Christmas presents because we were going to pack up things for them. They're in prison, and that's where they belong. That was my attitude. That was my perception, and I would have argued with anyone who told me differently. That's just how I thought. They were prisoners. They're in prison for a reason. let them go in there, and then when they get out, then we could worry about them. I'm not going to prison. So it came time to go to the prison. We loaded up. Everyone is just having a blast in the van, and we drove a couple vans down. It was about a 2-hour drive to the prison. Everyone is just excited. Everyone's jovial, and I'm upset that I'm going still, and I'm nervous because I'm going to prison. Right, I'm going into prison, a place I never want to go. We get to the prison. You bring your instruments in. They open up the case. They search everything, and then you go and you have to go through the thing. And they wand you, and you go through the metal detector, and they pat you down. And they're giving you all the rules and regulations. And I'm not happy. Still, I'm still nervous. I'm still scared, and I still don't want to be there. So we get to the prison. They take us to the room where we're going to do the thing, and we start setting up. And then as we're setting up, the prisoners start walking in to take their seats for what we're going to do. And we're going to my role was to play the bass as we did some songs, and then sit down and listen to Tony Mack give a Christmas message, and then we were going to leave. And I think we played a song at the end. So as they're walking in, that's when my perception started to change a little bit. I see these guys start walking in, all different shapes, all different colors, all different ages, and I'm not saying I'm a good judge of character, but I've been around people enough. I've been a teacher, I've been a minister, I've been a pastor, I've been all those things. And you can look in people's eyes sometimes and just know. And I'm looking at these guys, and they're making eye contact and giving us heads up and stuff like that as we're getting ready. And I'm slowly starting to warm to what we're getting ready to do. I'm like, oh, okay. These are just normal guys. I'm not saying they weren't bad. I'm not saying they didn't do anything wrong. And there's a good chance that there were murderers and rapists in that crowd when we were there. But they're sitting there, and they're ready for church. They're coming to church. They know this is a church service. And they all sit down. We start playing. They all stand up. They're all praising and worshiping. They're all clapping. They're all singing along. They're with us. We're with them. And we're just having a great time. I'm having a blast. It was just a really, really good time. Then I hear Tony Mack get up and start to preach. And he starts giving the message about Christmas, but he's talking about being in prison. And every single guy's eyes were fixated on Tony Mack and the message he gave. And when it was done, they all came up for prayer. They're all shaking our hands. They're all giving us thanks. They're all telling us what it means to them to help them get through their time. And my perception right then was instantly changed. I instantly said, I want to go to do prison ministry more. I want to be in prison to do what Tony Mack just did, to bring these guys hope and to bring these guys the message and to give these guys an opportunity to praise and worship and to give these guys an opportunity just to talk to people that are from the outside. And like I said, it just totally changed my mind. My perception, these are hardened criminals that don't deserve a thing. And when I left, my perception was, I want to go back. And I want to minister to those guys, and I want to talk to those guys, and I want to hang out with those guys, and I want to share with those guys, and I want to just again talk to them and play music for them and stuff. And it just, like I said, it totally changed my mind. And when we got done, we got outside, and Tony Mack came and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he just looked at me. I didn't have to say anything. He looked at me and he goes, "I told you." And I go, "You did." I said, "When are we going again?" And so I had to go and get a permanent badge to go to prison. And the first time we went, it was going to be a group. There's 4 guys. We were like the prison band that went with Tony Mack for a decade or maybe even more. We hung out with him that much and went to prison, a couple times a month. And it was me, Eddie Foster, Brian Foster, and Sonny Reynolds. And usually some combination of that went. Now, Brian and Eddie were extremely dedicated and went the most, but Sonny and I went at different times with them. And so the first time that we're going to do this as a band, so we decided, hey, let's get a small prison band. Let's go travel with Tony Mack anytime we can, and let's support him. And it's so much fun. Let's do it. We said, okay, let's do that. So the first day we were going to go to the women's prison in Oklahoma, and it was going to be me, Brian, Eddie, and Sonny. And about the day before we left, Eddie and Sonny couldn't go. So Eddie played guitar, Sonny played guitar and sang, Brian was the drummer, I played the bass. Eddie and Sonny couldn't go, so it was just me and Brian. And we were looking like, do we go, or do we just tell Tony to do it by himself. It's just a drummer and a bass player. I mean, I could play guitar a little bit. And Tony Mac's like, no, you need to come. If you thought the men's prison we went to for Christmas was great, just wait till you get to the women's prison. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I took my acoustic guitar. It was me and Brian. He had a little electronic hand pad, drum pad. We got there, we set up, we ran through a couple songs. I don't consider myself a good singer. I'm not confident in my guitar playing, especially 10 years ago when this happened, 15 years ago. The women all come in. They're very energetic in this church. Like they're up, they're talking, everything is great. Tony Mac gets up and says, hey, we're glad you're here. Let's do some praise and worship. And then me and Brian start playing, and I start playing a chord. I'm doing a 2-chord song. G and D. I'm playing Nothing But the Blood. You know, what can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. That's what we're going to play first. And I hit the first chord, and when I hit it, they all it was almost like a rock concert. They all stood up. And I'm playing and we're doing it, and I go, what can wash away my sin? And it was almost like a wave of sound hit me. It was like they were screaming, and they're like, nothing but the blood of... And it was the craziest thing that 2 guys, one who's not a good guitar player and not a good singer and not confident at all, it was like we blew the roof off the place. They worshiped. They sang along. They prayed. They were crying. Tony Mac gives a message. They were crying. We all prayed with him at the end, and it was such an unbelievable thing. It cemented in my mind the fact that I was so wrong the time before when Tony Mac said, we're going to prison and you're going to minister to those guys in prison for Christmas. And I was like, no, I'm not. My perception was totally wrong. Totally wrong. Now, of course, also my knowledge of the Bible was probably a little off, because the Bible says you're supposed to go visit guys in prison and people in prison. You're supposed to take care of those people. But man, you know, had I not stayed open and teachable with the help of Tony Mac's hand on my shoulder, so maybe there's another little message in there. Hang out with good people. Hang out with people that will challenge you and that will push you to look at things differently or to do things differently. But man, had I not stayed open, had I not been willing to humble myself and say, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go try this and just see what happens. I would have missed out on probably some of the greatest moments in my life when it came to serving others, to serving people in prison. It was an amazing experience, and it was all because, again, I opened my mind. I opened my heart. I wasn't willing to say my perception is right and I'm not going to think about it again. And I think that's a good, put that in your theological pipe moment, is open. Don't be so blind by what you think you know that you're not willing to listen to other people. Now, there are beliefs that you're not going to compromise, and I'm not saying compromise your beliefs, but be willing to listen. Be willing to understand where other people are coming from, and be willing to try something different or to open yourself up to something, because if you do, it could change the way you think about things. And in this example, it did. Don't... stay open, right? Stay open, stay willing to learn, stay willing to listen, and don't make blanket statements, and don't paint yourself into a corner that you're unable to get out of. Be willing to listen. And again, I can't encourage you enough. If you're listening to this and you don't know Tony Mac and you don't know his testimony, it's on YouTube. The video's not the greatest, but you don't need the video. Just his words are enough. Tony Mac testimony, Tony McMullen testimony. You'll find it on YouTube. It's probably an hour long, and it's worth every minute. And the story is nothing short of spectacular. And so, man, I look forward to seeing Tony in glory in heaven. But again, put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. Just remember that your perception is not necessarily always reality, and you need to be open and listen to other sides and other people. And that doesn't just mean in a spiritual sense like this. It means in a political sense, in every issue that we talk about. I mean, every issue is politicized, but different issues. Be open, be willing to listen, and then hopefully when you do that, the people that you're talking to are going to be willing to listen as well. And you know what? Sometimes they're not. If they're not willing to listen, if you're willing to have a conversation and to open up your mind to different perceptions, that maybe your perception is off, and you're asking someone to do the same and they don't, then move on, right? You can't be rational with irrational people, and sometimes they're irrational people, and sometimes it's okay to just say, okay, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We're gonna dust off our feet and we're gonna leave. You could look that up in the Bible. Jesus said to his disciples, "Go town to town and start telling people about me." But if they're not willing to listen, don't waste your time there. Go somewhere else. And so maybe that's something to think about too. But just keep your mind open. Perception is not always reality. There's always other ways to look at things. And when you open yourself up, you may learn something new. You may find something that totally changes your life. So, put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. And again, as always, be nice. Being nice to people is important, especially these days. We need it. And especially as we get closer and closer to the election, and all the stuff that we see going on and new stuff coming out. And we'll talk about that. And just a side note, tomorrow I'm going on vacation, so I'll be out on the beach, social distancing on the beach in Alabama. I'll probably try to record a few podcasts if I can or not, but if they're spotty, I think I've been pretty consistent, but if they're spotty over the next week, then you know why. I'm on vacation on the beach, just enjoying myself, but I'll try to do a few if I can. So put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. Be nice, and we'll see you next time.